Hello again, and welcome to the living room. My name is Joe Young, and thanks for tuning in. We're in the month of December here. We're coming upon the Christmas season, and we're in the middle of a series of videos about giving. Last week we talked about how being grateful for whatever we've been given by God and been given by nature and been given by other people, we savor those things to become more grateful, but then that fills up our tank to be better givers. Today I'd like to kind of continue the message and delve into the nature of giving and talk about how we don't want to be giving from a place where it's obligation or guilt-driven. We want to be giving from a place of passion. And when you're giving out of a place of passion and love, it's an endless type of giving. It's a joyous giving. It's a giving that your joy for the giving doesn't depend solely on whether the person fully receives your gift well or not. You're just a giving person in general. Kind of talk about this topic. In the Bible and in the Divine Principle, there's a very clear concept that selflessness, being concentrated on other people, is essentially godliness. That's good for your soul. And being selfish is, self-centered is kind of the nature of where our fallen nature comes from. And this is kind of very clear. The Bible says, and Jesus says, those who seek to lose their life will gain it. Those who gain life will lose it. So it's very clear. And even in psychology, even in science now, they're showing that when you're thinking about yourself, there's a much higher likelihood. Thoughts about yourself bring upon a much higher likelihood for a drop in your mood, a drop in the serotonin, the dopamine. They drop when you're thinking about yourself much more often. And the inverse is also true. When you're thinking about another person, the chances of that bringing upon a lift in your mood is actually much higher. So it's funny how these spiritual truths have existed for a very long time, but even science and psychology comes around to really support it. So selflessness makes us much more like God. Think about what God did. Made the whole planet, the rivers, the mountains. We talked about that last week in more detail. Gave all of that to us very freely. Have dominion over this place. It's yours. Here's the free will. Here's the creativity. It's yours. That's God's type of giving. So when we're that way, we're more like God. We're becoming more and more. The kind of misconception, though, the problem with this kind of clear-cut way of putting it is that there can be some misunderstandings. Sometimes we teach a very hard either-or proposition. Anything you do for yourself is bad. Anytime you're thinking about yourself, it's bad. And that's simply not true. We need to dive into the nuance here. Because taking care of yourself, for instance, I'm pretty sure that, let's say if you're a parent and you have kids that are relying on you, I'm pretty sure they would want you to be taking care of yourself. Your health, so that you can be around for them in life. Your finances, so that you can, support their efforts in life. So to simply say, anytime you want to have ambition, anytime you want to do something that you like, that's bad, and that you need to absolutely abandon all your interests, all the things that bring you joy, that is simply not true. I'm going to dive into that a little bit more here. So we have to kind of go back to the root of what makes something good versus what makes something not so good or selfish. And it goes back all the way to noticing how God designed us. Human beings are built with certain instincts and certain proclivities, certain default settings, right? One of them is we desire freedom. Well, is freedom a good thing or a bad thing? Well, it's a good thing. We want to be free people. We want others to be free, to be themselves. We want others to be free in their creativity. We've also been given hope and desire. We have dreams. We have desires, right? I want that awesome shipwrecked Brazilian guitar, and if you don't know what I'm talking about, you have to go a few messages back to figure that one out. I've been wanting one for a long time. One day I might get it. We have these dreams, we have these desires, the home in Maine or in the mountains. Those are not bad things. God built us with those kinds of desires, believe it or not. And it matches what he's told us back in Genesis, where he says, have dominion over the whole earth. Well, that's a pretty lofty goal, wouldn't you say? Also, the feelings of love. Loving and being with another person, a soulmate. These are all good things, but they're conditioned on they are good as long as they are based on living for others. When I have my freedom, but I'm using my freedom to better others' lives, then it's good. What happened is God didn't make fallen nature. God didn't make evil. God did not make self-centeredness. What happened is way back with our original ancestors, we had these instincts turned inwardly to the self. So when you have freedom, but then you make it inward and self-serving, it becomes your license. Screw what everybody else says. I don't care what you tell me to do. I'm going to do what I want. And it becomes a self-serving sense of radical independence. And that becomes a fallen nature. That becomes a disservice to people around you. The next one's a really clear example. Hope and desire. Beautiful things. You and your wife or you and your husband can make plans and desire and hopes, ambitions. Those are all good things. But when it's turned inwardly, it becomes greed. How can I get the most in the rat race? And you know what? Maybe I have to push some other people down to get what I want, because the main goal is that I get what I want. Then it becomes something not so good. Same thing with love. When love is turned inwardly, it's not about how can I make this person shine, how can I fulfill their life. It's about me and me enjoying their beauty, me getting them to make me feel good. That becomes lust. That's like a lust or a power. And so God did not make evil, but God did make these desires and hopes for freedom and love. And when they're turned back inwardly, it becomes a problem. Let's take an example. Here's an example in my life. Like, I've spent a lot of hours practicing the guitar. So let's say my motivation was, hey, one day I want to make great music for God and I want to lift people's soul with this music. That sounds pretty good. And you know what? The world kind of needs that, doesn't it? We need more of that. But what if my motivation was, no, I'm practicing the guitar so people will worship me. People are going to pay me to go to my concert tickets. I'm going to get this money. People are going to adore me. That's a very different motivation. So it's the motivation that makes something good or not so good. Does that make sense? So what's an interesting nuance here is, let's say you can't tell what my motivation for practicing guitar is. You're going to see me in the practice room either way. So the practice of it looks the same. You can't tell if I'm doing it for I want to create world peace, or maybe I'm just really motivated because I just want to prove my teacher wrong. We don't know what my motivation is in that particular moment. The practice looks the same. So we're going to follow me here on this, because this really kind of goes to how we are going to judge each other or judge ourselves on whether or not we think we're being spiritual or good people. Hey, sometimes you can't quite tell just by the way your life is going. You have to back off and not judge it so quickly. All right? So spending time developing yourself is not a bad thing. It could be your finances, your businesses, your talent, your knowledge base. It could be many, many different things. It's not a bad thing, as long as in the end you point that direction back to a godly type of motivation. I want to help others, lift others up, enrich other people's lives with what I can do. And the problem with stating this simple fact is that sometimes what I'm noticing in myself and in the world is sometimes once you go over there and you say, well, I'm going to develop my business. I'm going to buy my 3 homes. I'm going to make sure I'm stable and I'm good. Sometimes you can go over there for such a long time that you kind of lose track of the idea of looping it back into something greater. Sometimes you kind of go, well, I ain't no Mother Teresa. I'm definitely no saint. That's not for me. I'm over here. I can play my golf on Saturdays, and yeah, that's just life for me. And that's what I want to speak to. I want to tell you straight to your face, you are wrong about this. And I'll explain why. The more you've been building up, the more you may have to offer. The more you can teach, the more knowledge you have, the more you can help others. And if you haven't tried it yet, I think you'll find that it's deeply satisfying to help other people have victories in the ways that you've had victories. It's a deep satisfaction and joy you're missing out on if this kind of describes you. I mean, it did for me. I've practiced much of my life to practice music, but never really wanted to give it away to anybody. So I relate to this. What I want to say to you is that whatever your passion is and whatever your talent is, whatever you've been building up in your life, keep doing it. Follow it. Make it better. Explode it. Make it more exponential. It doesn't mean you have to stay there and let the Mother Teresas do all the spiritual work. Here's a great example. When St. Paul was picked by God, to write the New Testament, essentially, among other things, you know what he was before that, right? He was a very passionate guy, eloquent, studied, super linguistically talented, zealous and charged up guy. But what was he charged up about? He was charged up about killing Christians. Wipe these people off. And remember, they weren't Christians back then. They were like cult members, right? These people are in a weird cult. We need to get rid of them. Drag their reputation through the mud. Kill them if you have to. Chase them out of here. That was his passion in life. Can you believe a passion? Could you ever admit that your passion is that? It's terrible. But God looks at this guy and says, hey, I think I need a guy like this, but on my team. I need passion like this. And he met Paul on the road to Damascus, a very famous Bible story. And Paul turns his passion back around to something good and really changed the world with his contribution to the Bible. It's really quite a story. So I want to just say this right now. Let this be a lesson. Wherever you're at, God never closes the door on you, on your ability and your chance to contribute to yourself, to your family, to the neighborhood, to the community around you. God is waiting to use your passion, whatever it is. He won't close the door, and it's never too late. It wasn't too late for Paul, and it's not too late for me or you to just change direction a little bit. Same activity, same passions, slightly more others centered in its focus. And you know what's funny? Sometimes people in our lives close the door on us. he doesn't attend church the way I would want him to. He's just a money guy. You know how quickly we judge people if they're really good looking or if they're really rich? Well, man, we judge them hard, really quick. They must not be a good person. They must not really have a soul. No, I'm just joking. But we really do. And we close the door. And some people close the door on us. They think that we're all about whatever it looks like on the outside to them. But I'm here to tell you, and those haters out there, if there are any, that God hasn't closed the door on you. That's kind of something to think about. Maybe you're just building something and preparing something even greater to give back to others. What do you think about that? I don't think I would have believed it if somebody told me that while I was trying to practice all day, all night as a 15-year-old. But here I am 20 years later, and I feel like I've found a direction and home for all that work. And it's so exciting. I'm telling you, the satisfaction and the joy is much deeper than you would realize. So God wants you to be passionate. You know why? Because where your passion is, where your skill set is, where your interests are, is where you have more energy. I learned this so clearly when I heard a psychologist that I really love, David Viscott, saying something about being detail-oriented. And it was a funny joke between me and my wife. I always thought my wife is the detail-oriented one, and I am not. I'm just the space cadet. I can't keep track of anything, right? But I'm really inspired, and maybe I can tell a good joke every now and then, maybe. But David Viscott said that when you have passion, you will have more energy for it, and you will actually be paying attention to the details of whatever that passion is. And I realized, you know what? You're right. He's right. I'm not very detail-oriented, but for certain things, I am. I'm very detail-oriented about certain things in music, in how a story or a language is going. I really care a lot about those kinds of details. So I just want to tell you that what you're most energized about, I'm pretty sure that's where God wants to roll with you on that, wants to steer that and give it to other people. So whatever it is, guys, it could be finances, it could be your ability to save, it could be your ability to build business, it could be health, right? You got your workouts and your nutrition down, you could be helping people get healthy. You could have a passion project like, hey, I love making chemical-free soaps. And if you are, message me, because I'd be interested. I'm the kind of person that would buy that. We need artists. The world never needed more good, innocent, sweet, God-centered art than it does now. It's so hard to find, and we need it. And maybe you have nothing at all. Maybe you think you have nothing at all, but maybe you've overcome some things in your life, like your story, like your family, like your journey, and you have a healing journey, or you have something that you can share, a life experience that you can share with others. It doesn't have to be much. So bottom line here is, don't throw away the idea of being a spiritual person just because you think only the Mother Teresas do that, or your mother-in-law or so-and-so at church is casting vibes at you like you just don't have much to offer here. That is wrong. That's wrong. You got a lot to offer, and God's got the door open for you. Don't listen to anything else but God's voice on this topic. Pray on this. You'll see. So many famous Bible figures were all ranges of success. You had the richest guy in history. You had the Solomon, you have David, you had talent level, and then you even have stories where Jesus is praising the woman that gave her 2 pennies and said that this woman gave more than all the other people. And remember, the other people he was talking about were the Pharisees and the people who thought they were so holy because they were big tithers. He could tell the motivation. You're clunking your change in there because you want people to notice you. Isn't that interesting? Always find the direction back towards other people. Don't worry about what the impact so much is. Just get the direction going and follow the passion. Enjoy the giving process. Enjoy teaching process. And I really feel deeper satisfaction is coming your way. And a lot of times, what's stopping this change, I'm talking about the change of direction from me getting my money so that I'm stable and I'm feeling like a hotshot. What's stopping that change over to the others, focusing on the others, is going to take some prayer. It's going to take some reflection, because a lot of times it's rooted in some pain, or it's rooted in some resentment. I can relate to a feeling of, I don't want to be looked down on. I don't want to be scrubby, made fun of kid. You're not going to look down on me. And so out of that pain, maybe I practiced the guitar a little more than I thought I could. But out of that pain comes the energy of, you're going to worship me, right? And that's something you have to acknowledge, that a lot of times you have some healing to do. That's what's stopping the change of direction. Think about that. And I know I went a little long-winded today, but I really want you to dig into your passion. Think about coming from that pure place. And when you're giving your gift, I feel like that's one of the big purposes of life. Find your gift and give it away. That's the best thing I think you could do. And when we're doing that, we're more and more closer to how God wanted us to be. That's how God is. He made this whole world for us. He made family members for us to love, and He gives it to us freely. Jesus did the same thing. He loved the whole world, and He sacrificed Himself totally so that we might have a chance to understand and connect to God better. So thank you so much for this message. I hope that you can feel empowered and inspired to go not block yourself from exploring the next thing you want to do, the things you want to build up. Don't shut the door out on God. He hasn't shut it on you. And it's never too late to lift other people up with what you know and what you're good at and what you like to do. So thank you so much. That's our second message here on giving, and we're going to do more leading up to Christmas. So I hope to see you again. God bless.